Hello, science lovers. So today we are going to talk about hormones. So all of the lovely, lovely things that mess us up in our brain and, our body and feelings and emotions. And there's so much to discuss. So let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, guys. So today we're going to talk about the science of hormones. So what are we going to talk about? So let's pull that up. Well, this is essentially the questions that we are going to answer. What are they? How do they work? What are issues associated with it? So different types of disorders. And we're going to talk about various types of medications and treatments. So woohoo. So hey everybody. So I've got good morning. I'm going to say hi to everyone. Will melatonin be addressed? The only hormone produced by the pineal gland. I'll go through as much as I can. Hey everyone. So if you have questions, do not forget to send me, ask me in the side chat. And then there will be times where we'll be able to interact. So if you're new to this type of format, just really quickly, all of my topics are viewer suggested, and then they vote, and then I kind of put it in order on how they want. So let's talk essentially about the breakdown of hormones. They are cell signalers. So what do we mean by cell signalers? Well, essentially, they go and they attach to cells and they get the cells to do different types of functions. And we'll talk about those different types of functions as well. When we think of hormones, the system that we associate that with is the endocrine system. So it's essentially a whole bunch of different glands and organs all releasing different types of hormones that can set the cell to do different types of things. And so there are targeted cells associated with each one of those glands and hormones. Sometimes it's only a specific type of cell. So if you're looking at the pancreas, you have insulin that's made from that. So what do these hormones do? Well, they affect organs. They can affect your growth. They can change your mood, your sensory perception, respiration, develop metabolism, and how we reproduce. All right, so let's dive in a bit further. So this talk essentially has some pretty standard medical science and biology that's involved where it's heavily well understood knowledge. And so I thought I would break down the basics today of what hormones essentially do. Now, a lot of talk has been surrounding some transgender individuals as of late. Now, these individuals are undergoing what we call hormone replacement therapy, and they do have physical changes. Now, it's my intention to help educate others on what hormones do and how they affect our bodies, as well as using hormones as a form of treatment. Now, I have lots of different sources. Johns Hopkins, you can look at a standard anatomy and physiology textbook. There's also a really good website if you're curious on hormone replacement therapy, HRT, for transgender individuals. That's transcare.ucsf.edu. All of my sources are available at the end of this chat and on my website, scientistmel.com/resources. So let me address the chat a little bit and kind of catch up on what you guys are talking about. Let's see. How can I use midichlorians to my advantage? That's something I think we should really research. But the thing is we haven't discovered midichlorians yet. So until we discover midichlorians, we can't very well use it to our advantage. Maybe they're out there and we just can't detect them so much. But I think our closest bet we have on midichlorians is, I don't know, quantum particles. But then, those just kind of come together and make atoms, and atoms come together and make us. So don't know how that's going to work. But good question there. The force is strong with one clown shoe. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand is how hormones work. They are what we call cell signalers. So let's have a look at this pic from Khan Academy. I kind of like Khan Academy. So we're going to start with the very basics. All right. And then I'm going to show you something a bit more complicated. So I'm going to warn you in advance, you might get the science scare after this pic, but that's okay. Just kind of keep in mind this particular picture that I have right here. So what we're looking at, this is a very basic cartoon of how essentially hormones work. Your hormone is what you call your ligand, and that's going to fit into what looks like this little holder. That holder is a protein receptor. So what happens is when that ligand hops into that little holder, it sets off a series of reactions in the form of what we call chemical messengers. They relay that signal and they're like, hey guys, we have been activated. We need to have this particular response because we just got the signal. So you can think of it kind of like with Lord of the Rings. If you know those particular films, they have to light the Gondor calls for aid. So they light all the beacons, they get the signal, and then it sets a series of messages across. And then they're like, okay, Rohan's got to go and help out Gondor. It's kind of the same thing that happens with cell signalers. That ligand hops into that receptor. It sets off a series of reactions to get the cell to respond. So there you go. So now let's take a look at a very scary looking picture. You guys are about to freak out. I just know it. So let's look at this really scary picture right here. Fear not. Fear not. I'm going to explain this to you. We're going to take all of these scary little letters because everybody's afraid of letters. I always heard that the devil invented algebra because he added letters to it just to freak everyone out. I've heard that before. So we have letters in science too. So this particular picture I pulled from a paper, and I believe I have that paper linked at the end of the talk. This is what we call the LPA series of receptors. I've actually done research on the LPA2 receptor. So what that means is before y'all freak out, we're going to remember that the previous pic looks just like this pic, but it's broken down. We still have the receptor at the top that says LPA, right? Then you have these little chemical messengers. So these LPA receptors are what we call G-coupled receptors, G-protein coupled receptors. That means that little blue thing there attaches to the LPA receptor. All right. And then you got the little green boxes. Those are all different chemical messengers. All right. So LPA 1 through 7, you got no, I'm sorry, 1 through 6, LPA 1 through 6, those are all the receptors. And then your ligand is going to be in the form of lysophosphatidic acid that attaches to there. That little G protein attaches to the LPA receptor. And then you get these chemical messengers through. So those are what we call effectors. All right. So that's part of the chemical messengers, the ones that are red, green, and yellow. So the red stops the message. All right. So that's like an inhibitor. All right. The green gets the message passed along, and the yellow is pretty nifty. It can either stop it or pass it along as well. Now you notice that there are some dashed lines here, particularly around the LPA6 receptor. That means that this is all preliminary data, and that there needs to be further validation on whether or not these particular processes are associated with LPA6 at the time of this paper, which I think was 2016. So the solid lines show well-documented receptor action. You want to go to a bar and pick up, a person. You can be like, hey, baby, you want to be the ligand to my, receptor so we can get some good chemical, action going on. We can get our messengers flowing. I don't know. I'm trying to think something a bit better. And, it just happens that way. Anyway, you want to turn on my receptor by getting me some ligand action? There you go. I want to turn on your receptors. I want to be the ligand and turn on your receptors. That sounds better, doesn't it? There you go. That's a good pickup line. I want to be a ligand and turn on your receptors, baby. So you can use that. That might be interesting. Let me know how that goes, if that actually works. Hit me up in the chat or something later on another show. All right. So by turning on certain functions, by turning on certain receptors and knocking out the functions of others, we can also knock out any disease related to a high expression of the receptor and promote other responses in other receptors. So the title of the paper that I pulled this from is Promising Pharmacological Directions in the World of Lysophosphatidic Acid Signaling. There you go. So there you go. So that's the paper for that. So the reason why the LPA receptor is particularly important is because of the different things that it can do. So look at LPA1 and LPA2. I worked in LPA2 receptor computational chemistry, I helped develop a protocol with known what we call antagonists that can shut off the LPA2 receptor. Because that receptor has a high expression in cancer cells, it causes the cell, which normally with cancer cells, they tend to undergo what we call a self-destruct sequence. So if we have a self-destruct sequence, then that means the cell stops, it dies, it blows up, and then you don't have cancer anymore. But more aggressive strains of cancer have a high LPA2 receptor, which means it's constantly surviving. And it's making more copies of itself. So this is what the LPA2 receptor does. So if we're able to get, a hormone or a particular type, not a hormone, but a particular type of drug to where we're able to stop the LPA2 receptor from firing off, that can make things like chemotherapy and other types of cancer therapies more productive and efficient with a lower dose, right? So this is why signal or the cell signaling is particularly important. So now we've seen the scary picture. Let's hop back to that picture. I believe it's the next one, to where we can kind of go back and see, similarities, even though we saw all of this heavy discussion. All right. So the basic pick is still okay for you to use if you don't understand the bigger one. So don't freak out. That's the first thing. Don't panic. Douglas Adams reminds us of this. Get your towel. Don't panic. So if a picture like that freaks you out, go back to the basic one and make certain you understand the basics with that, and then jump over to the heavier, picture. All right. So it's important to note that not all receptors are those G protein ones. Okay. So there's all kinds of different ones. You can also have ion channel and enzyme linked receptors. There are also receptors that are deep inside of a cell and can also be on a nucleus. Those types of receptors usually bind to gases and molecules that can cross the plasma membrane, like steroid hormones. Estrogen for one is one example. Now, we can get into more of that on another show. Now that we know what happens with some cells with some receptors, let's talk about where these particular cellular signals come from, right? Always have a towel. That's right. Okay, so here is your endocrine system, guys. Aren't you? The endocrine system. It's these beautiful bubble thingies, right? So we have our hypothalamus, your ovaries or your testes, I don't have any testicles, but that's all right. There are people who can have both, so it's possible to have both. You have a pineal body, you have pituitary gland, thyroid and parathyroid, thymus, where a lot of your immune system comes from, and it starts shrinking by the time that you're around 35. So get your vaccinations early on, So adrenal gland. Let's see, adrenal gland, pancreas. Do we just have a subscription? Did it pop up? Guys, I have new Streamlabs stuff, which means it should pop up with really cool scientists fighting each other, or with, stuff when anytime somebody subscribes, or, that sort of thing. Hopefully that's working. If not, we'll sort it out another time. All right. Okay. That's all right. It popped up in the other window, but not this one. That's okay. So, oh, well, you know what? I might just run through and do tests of them anyway, just to show you how fun they are. I'm so glad you guys like this. So, you fixed it. Yay. So, we'll keep going. See, it's not a ScientistMel show unless we have technical difficulties. This is what I told Bull. They know it's real. You know it's real if we have an issue. Yeah. And so, moving on. Should be anterior to pituitary, though. Yeah, okay. True. All right. So as I was saying, your thymus is shrinking by the time you're 35. When you hit 35 and you start shrinking. So get your vaccines every single year, if at all possible. The ones that you need to keep up with. The younger you are when you get them, the more effective the vaccines are. Just as an aside there. And then you got your adrenal gland, you got your pancreas. So these are all different organs and glands that release. Now, they release all these different things. So the endocrine system essentially is what our cellular signalers in the form of hormones come out from, and all of those different glands in the body. So let's have a look at what these look like with this cartoon. There's a cartoon picture here. All right, our endocrine system. I'm so tempted to just say endocrine, but that doesn't sound right. And I also think we should change Colorado to Colorado, but people like, Dr. J and Andy are just like, nope, no Colorado. That's not how we say that. I'm like, but it sounds like a rock and roll, like awesome place to go. We're not Colorado. We are Colorado. They're not on board with that. So endocrine sounds like it, I don't know. Endocrine, I guess, is okay. But pronunciation of words, I like to say things wrong sometimes and see if anybody catches me. But I can't say endocrine system wrong. It feels weird. Anywho, so this is what the organs look like. We got our pineal gland, our hypothalamus and pituitary are right up there next to the brain. Our thyroid gland and thymus are pretty close together. Pancreas, we got our adrenal glands on top of our kidneys, ovaries if you're female, testes if you're male. Now, we need to keep in mind that's not the same as gender. People confuse biological sex with gender all of the time. And if you're confused about that and genetic sex, I did do a video on genetic sex versus gender. you can check that out. All right. So let me catch up on the chat and dive in a bit deeper about what each one of these kind of go through. So, woohoo. All right. So I'm going to catch up on the chat and dive in deeper. Waiting to get that up. There we go. Thanks, Bull. All right. So always have a towel. Let's see. Better be an agonist ligand, though, right? Yeah, that's true, Exhibis. You don't want to sit there and have, like, be a antagonist ligand to a receptor, because that's going to turn it off. So if somebody comes at you with that chat and that particular pickup line, that you want to be the ligand to my receptor and turn me on, or can I be the ligand to your receptor and turn you on? You'd be like, I'm sorry, no, you're an antagonist. Ugh, man, off, just like that. I'm glad you're here, soldier girl. Oh my goodness. Do they have Krebs signaling as well? Because I see PLC in there. PLC. What do you mean? Oh, PLC means lots of different things in my head. Kristen Frost is singing songs in the chat. Yes, those are G-coupled receptors. That's correct. So we went over the LPA various receptors 1 through 6. 6 is still we're still establishing a lot of the different functions in that, just to kind of show how complicated it can be, but we don't need to it doesn't have to be so complicated. So that's why we showed the 2 pictures. How about our Kansas? They did say that there are people who left Kansas because they weren't treated so nicely. And so they said, we'll just have our Kansas. And they did that. Why isn't the adipose tissue included? Yes, it can. So you're correct. I'm trying to go as basic as possible, but adipose tissue can secrete estrogen. That is correct. And that's part of the reason why they link a lot of extra fat stores to like polycystic ovarian disease, because of the increased amount of estrogen causing issues with menstrual cycles, as well as potential cysts on the ovaries, So I won't get into heavy detail with each particular disorder, kind of go through a list of what you can have, but keep in mind, when we're talking about the different endocrine disorders, you can have cancer in any of the glands or any of the organs. You can also have diseases that affect those particular glands and organs as well. And so anytime you have cancer, or you have that are as affecting those glands or those organs, or you have any infections or diseases that are associated with the function of those glands or organs, then that's where you can have too much of a hormone made or too little. And that's kind of where we get into a lot of the endocrine problems. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what each one of these particular glands and organs that I showed you pictures of. You come here for the science and get pictures of glands and organs. Why not? Be funnier if it were pirates who founded Arkansas. It would be funnier, and actually be pretty hilarious, seeing how it's landlocked. I think the Mississippi River does go along. Is it? Yeah. There's like only one little side of the Mississippi River that kind of goes along Arkansas. That's it. It's landlocked otherwise. Terrible place for pirates to settle down. Unless they're just looking to get away from the water. Maybe they've had it with seafood. But hey, there are catfish farms in Arkansas.
They got tired of the water and said, "Arr, I'm going to Kansas," and they got stuck halfway.
Oh boy. And that's Bullionators. Oh, if you're not familiar with Bullionator, he does have a Patreon, and he runs 2 of my shows right now, and also runs the Geek Room, their shows, which is great. So it's awesome to have him on board. So we have better quality because he's helping out, and I do pay him. So I just want to make that known. I do actually give him money for this because I appreciate what he does, and I'm trying, and he appreciates what I do. So it's a good mutual respect thing. All right, so let's talk about these different types of organs and glands and, and all of that. Oh my goodness. You need to bury your treasure somewhere where other pirates won't find it. That's true. So if you go to Arkansas, surely there's pirate treasure somewhere. If there's not, I'm extremely disappointed. I'm just saying, you know. All right. So hypothalamus. Let's start with that. So we saw in our little picture, that's kind of there at the base of the brain and near kind of where your optic chiasm is. So that's kind of like the optic nerve. Okay. So people who are hit in the back of the head, you see stars. The reason for that is because that's where your vision is processed. So you're basically reversing the signal of that little electricity going back to your eyeballs, and that's what causes you to see stars. Now, the hypothalamus secretes hormones that essentially stimulate or suppress the release of hormones in your pituitary gland. Now, they can also control water balance, sleep, temperature, appetite, and your blood pressure. The pineal body. Now, that's located between what we call the corpus callosum, and that's in the middle of the brain. Now, it produces this hormone called melatonin, which is supposed to help your body know when it's time to sleep. Funny thing, melatonin is not sold in the UK, but it is sold stateside. And I'm not certain why it's not actively sold in the UK. It's kind of weird. I have to say, I always have to take one of those masks when I go visit London because of the fact that the sun rises is like 3 or 4 a.m. And I'm like, what the heck is this? This is nuts. Anywho, so the pituitary gland, this is located below the brain. Now, it's not any larger than a pea. Like a little green pea. Now, the gland controls all kinds of functions, and it can also control other endocrine glands. So it's an extremely important gland. You start wonking around and messing up the different hormones that come out of that, you could have like a cascade of different events and have all kinds of other things going on in your body. So keep that in mind. The more control a gland has, if you have anything that goes wrong with it, it can mess up several different processes. Now, your thyroid and your parathyroid, they're located in the front of your neck. All right. So usually right here, they talk about goiters and stuff. You can have an enlarged thyroid, hyperthyroidism. The hyper means you're making too much thyroid hormones, hypo, not enough. All right. So that plays an important role in your metabolism. So people who have hyperthyroidism tend to have super fast metabolisms and don't gain weight so much. Hypo means your metabolism is extremely slow. All right. And so the parathyroid, that plays an important role when it comes to your calcium balance. And so if you have issues with that particular gland, you could have issues with bone density and that sort of thing. So the proper calcium, because you need calcium for your brain to work. You also need calcium for your bone density. So it's an extremely important mineral to have in your body. All right, your thymus. We mentioned this. This helps regulate your white blood cells that fight infections and destroy abnormal cells. Remember, cancer tends to be one of two things. First, a failure of the self-destruct system within the cell for it to go, okay, self-destruct. Two, a failure of your immune system to destroy the cells. So, elderly onset cancer. So people who get cancer when they're really, really old. Usually it's because of the fact that their immune system isn't as proficient as it used to be. That's due to shrinkage in the thymus. So that's why it's really important for particularly like with HPV. If you're 45, if you're up to the age of 45, the FDA and the CDC have allowed the vaccine, the Gardasil vaccine, which now covers, I believe, 9 different cancer-causing HPV things. Now, the one you want to worry about, particularly if you're male, is 16 and 18, because that can cause oral and head, neck, and throat cancer. But you can still get the vaccine, even if you've been exposed to HPV. This is coming from a man who helped develop the vaccine, Doc Savage, which will be on our new show on Sunday. So I'm going to plug that. Doc Savage helped generate and develop the HPV vaccine from his mouth. And you can see him talk about this on our show when we talk about vaccination, is that even if you've been exposed to HPV, you get the vaccine, you will still have a higher response to the vaccine than the virus itself. So get the vaccine. Get it while you're young as possible. even if you're 46 or 47, if you can fork over the $200, you need 3 shots, set aside money. That will help boost antibodies against those particular viruses that cause cancer. Yes. All right. Adrenal gland. Adrenal gland. It's located at the top of each kidney. Now, like lots of different glands, the adrenal glands work kind of hand in hand with your pituitary gland and also your hypothalamus. Now, they make and release what we call a corticosteroid hormones and epinephrine. So that's kind of your fight or flight thing that you feel when your adrenaline's pumping. This helps maintain blood pressure and regulate your metabolism. And so it can also increase and open up blood vessels and get a lot of stuff going. Yes, I do answer questions, but I have lots of chat. So let me get through. Let's see. So people with autoimmune disease are more likely to get cancer. Possibly. The problem with autoimmune disease, and I actually did a show on this, is that your immune system is super sensitive to the point it's attacking your own cells. I do answer questions, so you have to have a little bit of patience with me because I have several chats all on the same screen. So I try to catch in between giving the information and taking questions. But yes, I do take questions. Just give me a minute to respond. So autoimmune disease is very, very different. You can still get cancer, but essentially the cancer cells manage to trick your immune system into letting them live. And if they have that high expression of the LPA2 receptor that I mentioned in the past, the cell is going to continuously just save itself over and over and over again, unless and I need to really look, and this is something I need to do, that's where I'm kind of limited on my knowledge, and I don't know everything, and I'm happy to admit that. I'm actually curious to see how it is. What are the mechanisms? And it can be different between each particular type of cancer and how it responds to the immune system and what the immune system does in order to take out that particular cell. A lot of immunotherapies have moved ahead in basically rewiring your immune system to attack your own cancer, but it doesn't always work. So if you have the elderly onset cancer and your immune system is already really low, immunotherapy is a step up. And it's a way to reprogram antibodies to get them to attack your cancer, but it may not always be effective because you have to have enough white blood cells in order to convert them and have them set to attack your cancer. And if your cancer is already very system-wide, it may not be as effective. So it's something to keep in mind. All right. So we got pancreas, ovary, and testicles. I do not have testicles. I suppose, if I did, maybe I could get into, have a better chance at getting into office and controlling bodies of women. little side joke there. Yeah. Anyway, we don't really get political here, but we do talk a lot about the science. And I have talked a bit about body autonomy, particularly with Dr. Leah Torres, Nate Brody, and other people. There's Motel Cowboy and Atheist Husker, who is a sex education person. Motel Cowboy used to work for Planned Parenthood and is an activist. So, all righty. So let's talk about the pancreas. So it's kind of across the back of your abdomen. So your abdomen's your middle section, and it's behind the stomach. It's important because it helps in digestion. Now, it also helps with hormone production as well. Now, the hormones that the pancreas makes, insulin and glucagon, and these regulate levels of blood sugar. All righty. Ovaries. Ovaries are better than underees. Underees isn't a thing. I just made that up now. All right. So women, our ovaries are located on both sides of our uterus. All right. And so they're below the opening of the fallopian tubes. And that's the tubes that go from the uterus to the ovaries. And in addition to that, they contain the egg cells necessary for us to have reproduction, and the ovaries also produce estrogen and progesterone. So, funny thing, I should probably, I really do need to do an episode just on how female reproduction works because a lot of people don't quite, as far as like our reproductive organs and how they work, because a lot of people don't understand all the different bits and pieces and that there are proper names to them and what they do. So that might be a good episode to have, just for generalization, talking about how ladies' bodies work. That'd be pretty awesome. Probably need to do that. All right. Testosterone isn't uncommon in women, you're right. But they accelerate bone osteoporosis and bone brittleness. Yes. And here's the other thing. Women athletes also have a higher production of testosterone and a lower production of estrogen, which causes them to actually build a bit more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been in the news for like hormone replacement therapy and that sort of thing, particularly amongst athletes. And what are the things that we can do? All right. Well, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Exhibis, for being here and chatting with me. All right. So testicles. That's a fun word to say. It almost sounds like popsicles, doesn't it? But they're completely different in all kinds of ways. Yes. So a man's testes are located in that little pouch that hangs suspended, on the male body. Testes and underees. I'm calling testes underees from now on. That would make sense, though, because they are under, aren't they? Now the testes, they produce testosterone and sperm. Little swimmers with little heads and tails, and they're just all like swimming around. All right. So let's talk about, I'm catching up on the chat, and then we're going to take a look at this picture here. Let's see. We should call testes underees. Do you have underees or ovaries? That's a t-shirt, Bool. That's a new t-shirt, isn't it? Do you have underees or ovaries?
Heck yeah.
What do you think?
I'd wear it.
You'd wear that t-shirt? Awesome. So do you have underees or ovaries? The government wants to know. All right. Oh my goodness. Here we are. All right. So our endocrine disorders. There's all kinds of different things that are associated with your endocrine system. You can have too much or too little hormone. All right. So if your hormones there's just way too much in there, that can cause an issue. There's way too little, that can cause an issue. Or if you have lesions or tumors on those glands or organs, then you're dealing with an issue to where it causes too much or too little. And you can also have receptor issues. So that's not necessarily an endocrine disorder because it's not related to the glands or the organs, but I threw that in there because if you don't have the receptor to receive the hormone, then the hormone's useless. And we're going to talk a bit about that. Placing drink down until after underees. So let's dive in a bit more about this. Oh, goodness. It would make a killer underwear design. I can make underwear on my shop if you're curious. And if you like my mug, Cam Girl for Science. And guys, I have a t-shirt too. Cam Girl for Science, because I was taking something negative said about me and I'm turning it into something positive. we're going to own all of the negativity on the internet and make something positive out of it. So I actually have a whole section of my shop where we just donate all the proceeds to charity. In all of my Pride merchandise that I have, all of the proceeds go to the Trevor Project. Hey, Geek Room, what's up, guys? All right, so so we need, do you have ovaries or underees? That's going to be, I guess, on underwear and t-shirts. Makes sense. All right. So when we're talking about endocrine disorders, all right, we can have increased or decreased levels of an endocrine hormone. Now, this can be caused by what we call with the endocrine feedback system. So normally how that works is you have the particular presence of a hormone kind of tells your organs or your gland, stop making this other one. We have this one now. So you have hormones that want that, or you'll have like a product from a series of chemical reactions that happen. And once you get a substantial amount of that product in your bloodstream, then that tells your gland, okay, we don't make this one anymore. It's fine. An example of that, if you're on steroids to lift weights, if you're juicing, you have a high, you're adding testosterone to your body. So your testes are like, we got all this testosterone going on. I don't need to make any more. So what happens? Your testicles start shrinking. Your underees start shrinking, guys. So they start shrinking up. They make less testosterone, and that's exactly what happens, because if there's lots of testosterone in your body, your testicles are not going to make it. That's what we call the endocrine feedback system. You can have a disease. So you can have an infection or a disease associated with one of the glands or the organs, and that can cause a problem with too much or too little. You could have an issue where one gland isn't stimulating another gland to make, hormones. So if you have a problem with your hypothalamus, that can mess up production of stuff in your pituitary gland. Shrinkage at its finest, right? You can also have a genetic disorder. This is called multiple endocrine neoplasia, and there's 3 different versions of this one. And you can also have something called congenital hypothyroidism. You can have an injury to your endocrine gland. You can have a tumor on your endocrine gland, or on your organ associated with that. So most of the endocrine tumors and nodules, or these lumps that we see, are not cancerous. Like, for instance, when you get a cyst on your ovaries, like polycystic ovarian disease, those little lumps on your ovaries, they're not necessarily cancerous, and they don't really spread to other parts of the body. However, a tumor or nodule in the gland may interfere with that production of the hormone. So it might either increase it or decrease it, depending on the nature and where it is and what it's doing, right? All right, so some hormone disorders, they are due to lack of a receptor. So you can have a mutation in one, or an inability of the receptor to have the hormone activated. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. So let's show all of the different disorders that you can say. I am on Twitter. Oh, wait, y'all are talking to somebody else. All right, let's show all of the different disorders really quickly, and there'll be plenty of time for me to catch up. So these are whole lots of words, so these are whole lots of words. What we're looking at here, let's see. All right, so we have acromegaly, Addison's disease, Cushing syndrome, de Quervain's thyroiditis, diabetes, thyroid goiters, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, hyperhypoglycemia, hyperhypoparathyroidism, hyperhypothyroidism. And then that MEN that I told you about, you have 1, 2A, and 2B. Those are the 3 different types. You have metabolic syndrome, which is associated with changes in your metabolism. Some forms of obesity have to do with different hormone issues. You also have osteoporosis. You have parathyroid diseases. You have pheochromocytoma. You have polycystic ovarian syndrome, often put down to POS. You might see it as that very often. Thyroiditis and Turner syndrome. All right. So there are subcategories associated with the different disorders listed here. I've left out pretty much all of the cancers associated with the organs and the glands and the endocrine system. You can still get cancer on all of them. There are also diseases that can affect glands and organs as well. We mentioned infections, other different types of diseases that can manifest, whether genetic or not. Anything related to sex hormones tends to fall in not making enough or making too much testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. We mentioned earlier about adipose tissue increasing the amount of estrogen that's produced, which is also linked to polycystic ovarian disease or polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now let's dive in a bit deeper and talk more about this. And I will catch up on the chat. All right, so here we are. So let me go through. Let me see. Okay, yeah, we're catching up. Underees go under. That's right. Shrinkage at its finest. Oh my goodness. Let's see. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you guys are here hanging out with me. All right. So let me catch up on some questions. Let's see. Can ligand-related disorders manifest late in life, though? That's possible. You can also develop a resistance to a particular hormone. So one thing is prediabetes, where you start to exhibit diabetic signs because you've become insulin resistant, likely due to a high amount of insulin in your blood. Your receptors just are not responding so much to it. So that question came from Exhibis. Soldier Girl. I have read ovaries internally produce testosterone, which is then converted to estrogen, and cysts can cause testosterone to be released, leading to masculinization in females like beard growth, etc. I would honestly need to read a bit more on that because unfortunately I don't know everything, but those are really good questions. And I've kind of mentioned earlier, I probably do need to do an episode just on how body parts work in regard to reproductive organs, particularly in women, because there seems to be a lot of misinformation on that. But also it'd be good to discuss men as well and say, this is how men's bodies work. And this is why you need to have stuff checked. That'd be pretty cool. Miss Shadow Kitty, you have Hashimoto's. I'm sorry. I'm rooting for you, though. All righty. In other words, we're all going to die of something. True, Big Kahuna. We are. Hello, Inquisitive Condry. First time in here. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited you're here hanging out with us, talking about all of the different things that our bodies do with hormones. All right. How about cascading effect on the hypothalamus and affect gonadotropin, leading to complications? Well, yes. If you have any issues associated with your hypothalamus, that helps regulate lots of other glands and organs in your body. And you could have a cascading effect to where the gonadotropin isn't being produced enough, or maybe it's being overproduced. So yeah, I mean, anytime you're messing with the hypothalamus, you do you do see a lot of issues associated with all the other organs that it helps regulate, particularly like with the pituitary, because it actually helps regulate the pituitary gland as well. And the pituitary, they call it the master gland, So if you're messing around with that, even though it's teeny tiny, it helps regulate the rest of the body. Okay, let's see. Let me see. All right, so I didn't list every disorder possible in that particular list. There are, like I said, subcategories and different ones. You can have cancers on all of them, so it can run the gambit. So hormones regulate so many body functions. Other disorders are related to the inability to use a hormone. This tends to fall under lacking the receptor to signal the processes, or there may be a mutation in it. This is why there are women who have developed as women but have a Y chromosome. They have what we call androgen insensitivity. So you can have varying degrees of androgen insensitivity. They lack the receptor to process testosterone in this case. Now remember, nature's default setting is to develop as a woman. Now the Y chromosome has instructions on it to shift to male reproductive development. There are many hormonal treatments to counter a loss of a hormone. Now, the overproduction tends to be a problem. Now, for instance, diabetes. Those particular disorders require individualized treatments, and sometimes it is in the form of hormones. Other times, it is an attempt to suppress its production. Hey, Mr. P. Hello, everyone. All right. So I want to take a moment to discuss transgender hormone treatments. Now, the thing to remember is that everyone, outside of a few, like the ones I've mentioned, have receptors for both estrogen and testosterone. So hormone replacement treatment, that's also known as HRT. So HRT is known as this hormone replacement therapy. It shifts cells to producing characteristics associated with the biological sex for that particular hormone. So transcare.ucsf.edu I found to be an excellent website that discusses the physical changes a person undergoes while in transition. Now, when you transition from male to female, your body changes, including reducing muscle mass. The bone density tends to remain the same, but it can take as much as as much as 2 years for a full transition. And they recommend that you wait until then to have any surgeries to appear more feminine. Now, transitioning from female to male produces the opposite effect. Now, breasts don't necessarily go away for trans men. So trans men are recommended to wait about 6 months before they have any breast reconstructive surgery. Just, to make certain everything is reduced, to the most effective way possible. Now, trans men will gain muscle mass. They have fat redistribution and grow hair in all kinds of places. So, unlike trans women, will have fat redistributed, their skin, even things feel differently. Your sense of touch feels different when you're transitioning. All right, so both trans men and women also develop health risks associated with their new sex through that hormone, because now their cells are behaving as if they are their biological gender of male or female. So that's important there. Hey, Soldier Girl, HRT, awesome. I'm glad things are going as well. Okay, let me check up on some of the questions here. All right. There's a fine line between neurons and the endocrine system. Is it only me who thinks that? Well, kinda. I mean, you have with your neurotransmitters, they behave, certain, usually through calcium channels and that sort of thing. Oh, hey, we got is that a new subscriber? You guys like that? That's Stephen Hawking. I'm so glad we saw that. New subscriber, guys. I figured out Streamlabs on how to do the alert boxes. So all of the alert boxes, I'm just going to tell you, there's a game. I think it's a 64-bit game online that kind of looks like old Nintendo style, where you can play as a scientist in a fighting style game. So in a super chat, Alan Turing is fighting Stephen Hawking. So anytime you do a super chat, you're going to get Alan Turing and Stephen Hawking fighting. I think patrons, anytime I get a new patron on Patreon, that pops up as Nikola Tesla. How cool is that? I love that so much. That just makes my day. Sit there, and I get to share that with you. I think Stanford and UCSF was the first place where hormone replacement therapy started. I think so too. And I really, really like the way that the website is set up. So if you have lots of questions, it breaks it down really, really easily. Thank you for subscribing, Inquisitive Quandary. You can discern more color shades now. That's interesting. Oh, man. Oh, can I? If I had a wrench, I could post an affectionate ask guy in your honor. Let me see, Mr. P. Can I do that through Restream? I'm not certain. I can do it on my phone though. See, I'm getting better. I am getting better with oh goodness. Let me turn this down. Nope, that's an ad. I have ads on my own videos. I'm not immune to my own ads. Isn't that funny? So let me see, Mr. P. Sure. You have been wrenched. Keep it clean, guys. Keep it clean. We a family show here. Now, Sunday, really quickly before I wrap this up and get into this, really quickly on Sunday, we have the very first episode of Oral Audacity with Doc Savage. If you've noticed him on other channels and other live streams, he works, he's a scientist, has worked in immunology for a very long time. We're going to basically rip apart Deepak Chopra. Going to rip apart one of his science papers that's featured in Nature. Now, it's not cool Nature. It's translational psychiatry. So that's their borderline woo. You know, even Nature has a borderline woo publication. So keep that in mind. So if you want to take a look at that, I believe I've posted that on my Twitter. And I'll go to where Oral Audacity episode 1 is and post a link to that paper so you can read ahead before we completely destroy it, because it's nonsense. So we're going to have fun with that. Let's see. Alrighty. So let me talk a bit more. Let's talk about trans athletes, because that's a thing. I'm not taking a dig at anyone because I know what's going on. I'm not taking a dig at anyone. So before I'm not saying anything, I'm not going to even get involved in that argument. But what I'm going to say is there has been a lot of talk about trans athletes competing in sports. Now, there does need to be more research involving this. However, once these individuals start on their hormone treatments, you can safely say at the 2-year mark that they are physically their new gender in just about every way possible, save the reproductive organs. Even body mass changes, muscle mass changes, fat distribution changes, skin changes, all of that changes. So one way that we can address this, because people are like, well, what's fair competition? We're talking about athletes, we're talking about people who have trained their whole lives anyway. So yeah, we know fair competition. So we can address this issue. And one way to do that is to allow people to compete together and institute new parameters to measure for testosterone levels, weight, height, muscle mass, etc. We can eliminate gender and focus on the science in the blood through hormones and cellular responses. People are worried, well, hearts are bigger in, a trans person if they're going from male to female. But, I don't see a lot of the female to male arguments here. So how about we just eliminate the genders altogether for that? What isn't okay is exclusion. We cannot study, learn, or even address any potential issues unless we are inclusive. How are we going to study trans athletes if we don't allow them to perform in sports? But we can change the parameters. We can use biomarkers. We can do that sort of thing and just kind of check that out. So what research is there? Okay. I spent some time digging around into research looking for studies associated with trans athletes. There isn't much yet, but what there is available discusses how policies involving sports and who competes aren't really evidence-based at all. This is the biggest problem, as evidence-based parameters on who gets to compete against whom is not in place. Now, science is working to study if there are advantages of athletes post-HRT therapy. There may very well be, but we need the evidence for that before making that call. And how are we going to get that evidence if we don't let people compete? So, shifting to biomarkers for parameters instead of division of man sports and woman sports will also pave the way for all-inclusive competition, where there truly is a level playing field. Let's go to science for resolution, not outdated parameters that are not even evidence-based, but solely made with the idea of man sports and woman sports. We have the science. We can do biomarker parameters. So, alrighty, I'm trying to see what the thing is that you put. I can't read it, Mr. P. Let me catch up on the chat again. Oh my goodness. All right, for long-term potentiation in neurons, the chemical cascades do resemble that of endocrine system. Yeah, it might be very well the case. All right. All righty. Any questions you guys have, you can hit me up in the chat and I'll be happy to answer that. Trans athletes have been allowed in the Olympics since 2014, and so far the downfall of women's sports hasn't happened. Very good point, soldier girl. And the thing is how are they going to determine if somebody's trans or not? Are they going to just start literally checking, to see? I mean, I think at some point in time you do have an invasion of privacy. But honestly, I would really like to see an elimination of man-woman sports. Let's just be completely inclusive. Why is this even a thing? Women are capable. And here's something that's interesting. We kind of mentioned this a bit earlier. When women get into heavy lifting and they start to build muscle mass, we see a lot of, particularly in the elite women athletes, that they have higher levels of testosterone where they experience what we call amenorrhea, which means they don't even have a menstrual cycle anymore. They'll go months and months without having one. Doesn't mean that something's wrong, particularly with their body. It's just their body isn't undergoing a menstrual cycle because of the higher levels of testosterone. Does that give them an advantage? Why hasn't anybody gotten really upset about that? We've had intersex that have been performing in sports to where, XY chromosome, but that sort of thing. So it's just kind of one of those, we have to be inclusive. What's wrong with just eliminating man, woman stuff and to say, let's go to biomarkers. If you're really worried about whether or not, does somebody have an advantage or not, biomarkers. Make those the parameters, because there's no evidence-based parameters that science can see on sports policies, So, let's get rid of the divisions. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. If a girl is great or a woman is great as a quarterback, why not have her, in one of the football, in professional football? Yeah, we have women who go out every single day in military shooting front lines. Why not? Let women hop in on there. They know the risks. They want to play football and play football with the men. Why not? So, so let's just kind of go across. Yeah, if we stop being so serious about the games we play, inclusion may become a bit more common. Yeah, for real. I mean, if a person is capable and is able to run and do what they got to do, and they're able to meet the parameters, why not? Just compete with the people you're not completely outclassing. Exactly. If you're able to lift a certain amount and you have a certain amount of muscle mass, if it's the lifting things they're worried about, put them in classes based on muscle mass, on biomarkers, that sort of thing. That's what I'm saying. We have the science and we can do that. If you're worried that a 120-pound woman is not going to make a good quarterback due to body mass index, I understand. Higher risk for injury. If she's really good at it, maybe consider that she's good. But, there's other ways that we can go about this, Biomarkers can be tough because genetic chimeras are more abundant in women would be a disadvantage. Well, I'm mostly talking about also muscle mass, the amount of it, weight classes. I'm really looking more for the fact that so many people are afraid that trans women are going to outlift other women. But if you're worried about that, why not just put them all together and then just base it on weight and, ability as far as muscle mass, that sort of thing. Put them in classes like that. I mean, why has it got to be, why has it got to be this man-woman thing? It's just, let's get gender out of it completely. Let's go to the science. Let's get inclusive and see what happens. It's not a problem. It's not a problem until it's a problem. And like Soldier Girl said, trans athletes have been in the Olympics since 2014. Haven't completely destroyed women's sports, have they? No. So let's get inclusive and see what happens. All right, I'm going to wrap this up because we're getting like towards the end of this. How long have we been on? We've been on for a little while, but this has been awesome. So let's I'll take a few more questions. Women would get seriously injured in the NFL. There are very few small men in the NFL. Well, that's what I'm saying. If they're able and they're capable to do the job, all right, without serious injury, then let them in. Maybe you can have a super awesome, huge woman linebacker just completely destroy, That's just kind of what I'm saying. Trans people in sports is never a problem as long as one has some success. Only when it becomes an issue, that's a fair statement as well. So, but they're trans. They're destroying. It's not. If I say get rid of the sex classifications, I get naysayed. I'm so glad you said what I said. I want kind of like all inclusive, the complaints about trans and women's sports come predominantly from it, which is interesting. I don't see so many complaints about women transitioning to men. I mean, is that an issue too? I would like to hear what people have to say about that. Oh, they would never get in. Is that a thing? What are people saying about trans men in sports? I haven't heard a lot of that. Oh, we're not worried about a trans man beating us. I want to hear about trans men outlifting men. That's what I want to see. I want to see that. Trans men athletes, I want you to be successful. Let's get some science on you, trans men, trans women. I want to get the science. I want to see what's going to happen. I'm inherently curious. And this is just all amazing to me that we're getting into this world that's like this with so much diversity. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm just like, let's just get it all together and see what happens. So that's kind of like my perspective of it. So, all right. So let's wrap this up, guys. This has been amazing. All right. So let's wrap this up. What did we talk about today? All right. We talked about hormones. Woohoo! We talked about what they are, how they work, what are the issues associated with that, and medications and different types of treatments, particularly the HRT type of hormone therapy that we see with trans individuals. So it's just, these are all kind of the things we discussed. All right, so hormones, what are they? The breakdown. Cell signalers, they're part of the endocrine system that's got all kinds of glands and organs all together. We've talked about how they affect organs. They can affect your growth, your mood, sensory perception, respiration, development, metabolism, production, reproduction. We've talked about all these things. They got a whole list of sources, so this is huge. And I know you probably won't be able to see all of these, but niddk.nih.gov has information on endocrine diseases. Merck manuals, they have an easy to read patient or like a layperson consumer type of manual you can read. And they also have a more I don't want to say intense, in depth is a better word for the endocrine system and disorders associated with that. JohnsHopkinsMedicine.org. You can check out all kinds of information there. They have a whole really cool website just on hormones in the endocrine system. Medind.nic. This particular article, it talks about the different receptor issues that you can have for hormones. Transcara.ucsf.edu. You can check out hormone replacement therapy there and see what the work they're doing for transitional individuals. I have a couple of NIH.gov articles on healthcare and transgender individuals on HRT therapy. There's also an article on how a comprehensive review on how there is no evidence-based policies in sports, and that's one of the biggest factors and issues associated with trans athletes. There's also a book you can check out where it talks about transgender sports and studies and about unfair advantages, what we need to do to move forward with the science. And a lot of the things that they recommend is just smaller studies looking at trans men, trans women competing, comparing it to control groups. We just have to do the work. We just have to do the science. So where can you find me? Everywhere on the internet. I have a shop, guys. You can be a cam girl for science. And remember, I have an entire section just on scientistmel.com/shop called Blocked By. Everything that is part of that category, the proceeds are donated to charities, ACLU, the Trevor Project, Planned Parenthood. There's a whole series. I've been blocked by PETA. I've been blocked by David Avocado Wolf. So I'm going to make some more merchandise for that. And anytime that we have bad behavior on social media, where it's talking about pushing bad information, I donate. I put it on t-shirts and then I mugs, whatever, and I donate the money to various organizations, including another one, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, for mental health issues. You can find me on patreon.com/scientistmel. I have a special running this month. Patrons $20 and more get a free t-shirt. So if you like what I do, throw me a couple bucks over there and, I'll send you a t-shirt and stuff. You can find me on Periscope. You can find me on YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. You can go and get reminders for all of the upcoming shows. Facebook.com/ScientistMel. Twitch.com/ScientistMel. And that has been the science of hormones. We learned all about your brain and your bodies, and we have ovaries and undaries. So look for that. Do you have ovaries or undaries? The government wants to know. So that'll be t-shirt and underwear soon, I guess. Bullionator, you're going to get that t-shirt, huh?
Heck yeah.
And thank you to Bullionator. He has a Patreon as well. And he actually, I do pay him every month, but he gives me a little bit of a discount because we're friends, and that's his way of supporting what I do. And so I try to support him in the ways that I can. So thanks for that, Bullionator. And yes, if you guys, check out all my other stuff, and I will see you guys Sunday, 3 p.m. Central with Doc Savage. We're much cheekier on there, and we are not nice. Well, Doc isn't. I might still be a little nice, but he's not nice when it comes to Deepak. Well, he's funny. He's polite still, but I don't know. I will let you guys be the judge of that. I will let you guys be the judge. So I will see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. Central, for Oral Audacity, episode 1, Choking on Chopra. See you guys next time. Bye.